As creatives, procrastination is something that we've probably all done at some point or another. But whenever we talk about the word procrastination, it's almost always used in a negative context, and it also can evoke feelings of shame or even laziness. I know that personally for myself, it has been an uphill battle trying to battle against procrastination throughout my career, and whilst I've been a full-time content creator and photographer and running my own business, procrastination has been something that has followed me around very, very closely. But today we're going to be looking at procrastination in a different light, and I want to talk about why I don't always think that it's a bad thing to procrastinate, and why, especially with creatives, we may even need to procrastinate at times. But if you're new here, hi, my name is Kaylee, and I'm a beauty and fashion photographer based near Sydney, Australia. But I'm also a content creator, and I started this channel a few years ago to talk about all things freelancing, content creation, business, and social media. And as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about why procrastination isn't necessarily a bad thing and why you shouldn't always feel lazy when you do procrastinate. As I said before, procrastination is something that follows me around quite closely in my day-to-day. For those of you who have done the Myers-Briggs personality test and you understand the terminology, I'm an INFP, so I'm technically the epitome of a daydreamer. I get lost in my thoughts a lot, and I think even as creatives in general, if you do anything creative for work, it is something that we do tend to do a lot. And this is, like I said, an uphill battle for me over the years with procrastination. And I think always, like I mentioned as well, the term is used in a negative way most of the time. And it really does make you feel a little bit crappy if you haven't actually been able to be productive in any given day or have done the exact tasks that you've been planning to do. Now, I think procrastination does tend to manifest in a few different ways. Sometimes I think it can be a lack of discipline or scheduling with your week or your days. Other times it can be because you simply just don't want to do the task that you're supposed to be working on. I think we've all experienced that at one point or another. And then I think other times it can be because your brain might feel a bit overwhelmed, and whether it's the fact that you may have just too many things to do, too many things to think about, so you don't feel like doing any of them, or maybe it's because your mind just needs a break as well. So I think that there's so many different ways that procrastination does creep into our daily lives, and it's not so cut and dry. I'm really going to be focusing on that kind of brain overwhelm though today, because I think for anyone running their own business, for anyone that's a content creator, or for someone that is a working creative where they feel the need to be constantly inspired and constantly producing work, I think this is really where that brain overwhelm does come into effect, and that's what I really want to talk about today. So we're going to get straight into some of the reasons why I think procrastination isn't necessarily always a bad thing. And the first reason that I'm going to mention is that it actually gives your brain time out. I think these days most people are hardwired to feel shame and to feel embarrassment or laziness when they're feeling like they haven't been productive enough in a day. And unfortunately, when we're always feeling the need to be productive, it doesn't always leave a lot of room for creativity. And I've spoken about this before on my channel. I think that there's a level of toxic productivity that a lot of people tend to push these days. Even still, I believe hustle culture in previous years has had a lot to do with this. And I think there's still a lot of people pushing it out there, even on YouTube and on Instagram, and pushing productivity as like the king of all things. I personally feel that rigid routines and strict schedules do not work for every person. Some people thrive with that kind of scheduling, and I think that that's completely fine. And if you're one of those people, that's amazing. I know that I'm personally not one of those people, and I need to have that little bit more room for my brain to actually wander. I think creatives especially need that freedom, and I think we also need that space for our brains to actually become inspired. If we were just being productive day after day and week after week, not taking enough breaks, not letting our minds wander, not having that time during the day where we can really just kind of let our brains float away for a little bit and think about things and maybe take our mind off the work that we're actually doing, I think that kind of environment can be very stifling after a while, and it can be really hard to generate any sort of creativity from that. So I do think that it's really important to have those moments where we do procrastinate. And when I say procrastinate, sometimes it can be as simple as just sitting there and daydreaming for a little while, or moving on to something else that maybe wasn't on your task list for the day. Maybe it's moving on to reading a book for a few minutes, or maybe it is watching a YouTube video from time to time, because I know that personally I've done that before. I do that quite often, where something will just pique my interest, whether that's a YouTube video or a TikTok or something else. Sometimes you just need to have that kind of little spark of like interest away from what you're doing. And I think that that's totally fine. I think when it really starts to become a problem with procrastination is when we don't sort of have any set schedules or any sort of system that kind of works for us in that sense. The second reason why I feel procrastination can be a good thing is that I think that it can really keep your days interesting and keep that little bit more of an interest factor there, and it just doesn't feel so mundane. So I'm absolutely going to make an admission here. I am a procrastinator, as I mentioned before, but I do procrastinate daily. I wouldn't say for long periods of time, but I do still procrastinate for periods throughout the day. And I do this, I think, in a way because I can't really help it. As I mentioned, I'm an INFP. Classically, I am a bit of a daydreamer. I like to have those moments during the day where I just kind of sit back and let my mind wander, or I may even move on to another task that wasn't necessarily on my to-do list. But because I do procrastinate at times, and I know that I do this, I have to have a schedule and an organizational system in place that really works for me. So I've essentially set up this system so I can allow for that little bit of procrastination that I know that I'm bound to do during the week. Otherwise, if I didn't do this, I would probably daydream forever and I would get nothing done. So I obviously don't want that either. And this is where it can become problematic because it can kind of tip in either direction, and you don't want that. You want to still have that balance of obviously having that productivity throughout the day, but having those moments of procrastination when you can fit that in and when you feel that you need to. I think it's interesting because I find that I procrastinate more at certain times of the day, and depending on how my sleep has gone and how I'm feeling throughout the day will really determine when I'm going to procrastinate or not. I would say classically after about 3 p.m. in the day, my mind tends to switch off a lot. So I make sure that any tasks that I'm doing in the morning especially are a little bit more intensive, and then I kind of try to relax as the day goes on a little bit more, because I know that I'm absolutely bound to procrastinate, especially around that 3 p.m. mark. But in doing that, I kind of set up my work so a lot of the bigger things are done first, and then I can have those moments of procrastination a little bit later on if I feel that I need to. And then, as I've already touched on quickly during this video, I really think that it can spark creativity to just procrastinate every now and then. And as I mentioned, procrastination can really become a problem in certain ways, but I think if you can kind of keep a hold on it and sort of organize a schedule that works for you so you can have those moments in the day where you can allow yourself to have that little bit more time to help spark creativity. Because I know that a lot of people do struggle with, motivation and feeling uncreative and feeling in a bit of a box a lot of the time, especially as creatives working for ourselves. And even if you're in a 9-to-5 job and doing your creative work outside of that, again, it can be really easy to procrastinate. And I think that sometimes you should allow yourself to. I don't think that everything should always have to be such a strict schedule or a rigid routine, because it doesn't always work for everyone. So I think that sometimes it's okay to procrastinate. And if it's going to help you kind of spark that creativity with your work as well, then it's definitely something that you shouldn't be ashamed about doing from time to time. So let me know down in the comments section below what you think about this particular topic and what you think about procrastination. I know there's probably a lot of you out there who do struggle with it on a day-to-day basis where it does affect your productivity, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this and whether you think it's necessarily a bad thing or whether it can be a good thing too. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure you do, because I'll be posting a lot more videos like this one. And also let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next on my channel, as I'm always open to requests. But thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll see you in the next one.